I learn from other people in the community. And it's really a home where, whether you're a business user or an IT professional, you can improve your skills at driving the usage of Microsoft 365. And why is that important? That's important because that's an actual talent and a skill for which there are not as many people as we need in this business. And so I really wanted a place where people could essentially learn how to develop the 6 different skill areas that are required for driving adoption and being a service adoption specialist. And there are different levels of being an adoption specialist. Maybe you're just working in your own organization. You've got, 1,000 people or something, and that's what you're doing. But, my work, for instance, is global. It's worldwide with huge companies, and they're much more complicated projects. And how do you go from doing one to the other? So we really wanted to have a community where people could learn, and that IT professionals and business users came together to also build the muscles there. So we have free community calls once a month. And, we've seen our ranks swell rapidly over the course of the pandemic. There's been obviously a big focus on work from home, work-life balance, remote meetings, virtual events. So the things we talk about have been a little bit different. But I think everybody now understands the need that adoption is more than training. It's more than training. Rolling out a training program is not driving adoption. Connecting your technology to business objectives is. Managing a portfolio, having good communication skills. It's much broader than that. And if it excites people, it's also an incredibly valuable career path. And I really want to make that career path super clear to people, because it's an area where diversity is encouraged. I talk to a lot of people who don't have a degree in computer science, and they are some of the most impactful adoption specialists because they bring that alternate perspective, right, to the table. And I think that that's really helpful. So yeah, I love that program. I will continue to shepherd it as long as they let me. But, part of my goal is to make sure that there's lots of people who understand this the way that I do, so that, it will go on long beyond my tenure at Microsoft.
Yeah, and I totally get you. I mean, I myself, love everything about like end user adoption and stuff like that. And people kind of, as you say, misinterpret like what it really is. It's not just like going for training, like being taught Microsoft Teams, here's the buttons, here's what you can do, all the features and stuff. It's about like, okay, why should I learn?
Right.
And what's in it for me when I actually do my day-to-day job. So
Yes.
it's a lot of different perspectives going into like kind of one thing only. So
yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I love about running the Champion program is my ability to get direct feedback from people about what's important to them. And that's how we prioritize building solutions like at Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways to deliver that end user training experience inside of Microsoft Teams on all the Microsoft workloads. And that will ultimately get integrated with Microsoft Viva over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. Or the Champions management platform, because at the end of the day, I really like to build stuff. Like, I like to build things. That's actually my favorite thing to do, is just to kind of, sit in my office now here and play with the tools and build something fun, and then teach other people how to do it. But, this skill building in this space is really important. And that's also why, I'm the author of the Service Adoption Specialist course. And I'm excited that we are going to be extending that course to a 200 level, and with different types of projects as examples in that courseware. As I continue to evangelize this idea that being an adoption specialist is a specialized skill and should be recognized as such. And so, I wrote that course over the holidays, and I thought, well, I'm going to put it out there and see what happens. And so many people took the course. So many people did. It was a great success, and it's been really helpful and validating and educating people inside Microsoft as well why this is important.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people want adoption, but I don't think they always know how to get there. Or they confuse it with organizational change management, which is a different discipline with its own certifications like ProSci and other things. So this pathway I'm trying to build, and my team is really leaning in on, is about what does it mean to be a Microsoft adoption specialist, in addition to potentially a talented organizational change manager or doing some of the more non-technical types of change management that you do. They complement each other, but they are not the same.
No. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, also when it comes to training, I do a lot of teams training as well to end users, and I love kind of that you can almost hear the click in their head when you can actually kind of when they relate, when that moment when they can relate to, okay, I can do this to actually do this in a much more efficient way or something like that. That moment, kind of like, that's the best part of like being part of training users to use.
Oh yeah.
Tools.
I love that. That's one of the things that gets me up in the morning. I have these, I do a lot of work mostly at scale now, but I keep a set of customers that I work with directly, and they come and go depending on need and who brings me in or what have you. But that moment when I'm with a customer and they get what I'm talking about in terms of the technology to the business objective and what they could do, and you start to see their eyes light up with possibility, I love that. I'm a little bit addicted to that moment. And I'm just lucky that I've been able to work across a lot of technologies, Power BI and SharePoint and others that, that where those moments are often. So I'm sure that as we go forward, there'll be another thing, right? I mean, today it's Microsoft Teams and everything we're doing across Microsoft 365, but there's always going to be new technologies that come along. So the skill of understanding how to apply a technology to business problems is the skill that I'm really interested in people building. And then it also creates a tremendous amount of career stability for people and a great way for women in technology, women in STEM to participate in this revolution that is really centered around, the change of our relationship with technology as humans.
Yeah. So you Microsoft recently announced you now have 145 million daily users in Microsoft Teams. So one question is like, where do you go from here?
You have to sleep. I need some sleep and a vacation. No, I'm kidding. Actually, I'm not kidding. I need both of those things. But I love the fact that we announced that. And again, we're so grateful to be a part of people's lives, now in this way. I don't think anybody could have anticipated the surge of growth that we experienced 15 months ago. Now, however, I think the real focus is how do we remain relevant as people go back to their offices? I think everyone has a certain degree of meeting fatigue. I think if you don't, then you haven't had to do, 12 hours of video meetings for more than 3 weeks. It really does have an impact on your brain. So I think now we have to re-envision together, what's it going to be like when some of us are back in the office and some of us aren't? How are we going to leverage new devices? How are we going to leverage using built-in agendas and what have you to really make it feel like a seamless and integrated experience for everyone participating, right? And how do we have people, I think there's going to be a pendulum swing, right? People are going to be like, I just want to talk to people in person because I can now, right? And I think there's going to be a lot of that. But what we've seen, especially at events like this, is the ability to share information broadly all around the world using technology like this. The need for that in events and other things is only going to grow as we also continue to bring things back in person. So I really feel like next is like mastering this hybrid work that I'm sure you heard Jared or Jeff or someone else speak about. I tend to be on the tactical side of that. Like, okay, what does it actually look like in a day in the life? We've written all these day in the life guides on adoption.microsoft.com. So what does a day in the life guide look like over the next 12 months compared to what it looks like today for many of us who are still working from home?
Yeah.
And I have that answer. I know that my executive leadership, we have ideas about it. We have thought leadership on what we see in terms of trends. But if anybody tells you they know exactly what's going to happen in the next year, they're not telling you the truth. Nobody does. And we're going to have to figure this out together. And that's why events like this and forums like the Microsoft Technical Community, feedback into our products, and really engaging with Microsoft partners and MVPs around the world is so important. What it's going to mean to you is going to be different than what it means to your fellow potentially, right? And that's true inside your organization as well. So even as you make up a technology strategy, it's important to have some flexibility in there for different people needing different things at different times. And that makes life really difficult as an IT professional, but I know we can rise to this challenge. I've been unbelievably amazed about what we've been able to do so far. And the work I've seen IT professionals do over these last 15 months is really some of the best work I've seen in my whole career. It's really amazing with the help of those partners and MVPs. So I know that we'll figure it out, but I do think it's going to be an exercise in learning, certainly over the next 6 months and for sure over the next, couple of years.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, talking a little bit more about the current situation in the world right now. So how do you see, how successful has Teams been with business continuity during the pandemic?
Oh, it's been indispensable, and I don't pick that word because that's what I think. That's what I've been told. I've been told by customers in almost every segment of business and government, of healthcare, education, how indispensable our tool has been. However, I will say that there are these issues of fatigue that people are dealing with. There are these issues of polishing those rapid deployments. We do need to make sure that people get the true value of Teams more broadly in chats and Teams and with apps and what have you as we go forward. But I don't know that anybody would argue that, online meeting technology has been, unimpactful over the last 15 months. I think now it's about kind of understanding its impact, learning from it, and seeing how we can do better. And, I want to acknowledge, too, that Teams had some growing pains along the way. I'm sure every person on this call has been on a meeting where the video has failed or it's crashed or what have you. And that was especially true in March, April, May of last year. We've addressed those issues. For the most part, we've done tremendous work around performance of the client, and more work is coming. Again, we've delivered a lot of those top meeting features that people ask for, top collaboration features and integrations that people ask for. So I'm feeling really confident about where we are right now. But I do want to acknowledge that it's been a journey for us as much as it has been for anyone else.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite story, when a customer adopting Teams in this during the pandemic or something like that?
Let's see. I do. I have a couple actually. I need to put this in the right context. My favorite story is actually a somewhat stressful one. I was working with a local government agency who was struggling to manage their data and respond to the pandemic. This was in last April. And, I've always done work in public sector. I've had jobs in public sector. I've worked on naval bases, police departments, stuff like that. So I have an affinity to that. But, I kind of became the world's 911 operator for a minute there with some of these agencies at the beginning, trying to figure out what they were supposed to do, because a lot of these agencies had licenses they hadn't deployed, or they had, they had just like Exchange, but they'd never turned on Teams. So I'm working with this woman on the phone, and I'm trying to help her gather this data together and know what to do. She's like, well, I've got to run over to this place. She's literally talking about getting in her car and going somewhere to share this data with somebody who's at an outpost at a different location. I'm like, you don't have to do that. If you can just give us, 2 hours, we'll be able to light this up for you and blah, blah, blah. So we light it up for her, and we created an on-demand team, and she can all of a sudden communicate with the people at the outpost that was at the hospital. And this isn't a big, huge city, right? This is not like the city of New York with all of its infrastructure and people. This is a smaller, what we call tier 2 region in disaster management, right? Big, but not huge, and not all that much IT bandwidth. And so we light it up, they're able to communicate, and then I don't hear from her. Right? I don't hear from her for probably, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 weeks. And finally, she pokes her head back up again. And she says to me how grateful she is that we helped her, that now they can do all these processes. They can share information about incoming patient loads. They're sharing information about resources that are needed. In the middle of this, they had some kind of natural problem going. I don't remember now. I think it was like a power outage or a storm or what have you, whatever it was, also happened at the same time they were trying to deal with this pandemic. And that was problematic. And she said, I was so happy to know that I could hand this work off to my team and that they could communicate more quickly. And I didn't have to go around because her husband got sick. Her husband got COVID. So she was able to actually attend to her family because we implemented technology and she could hand it off. It was simple to use so that she could go and deal with what was really important. And I will probably never forget that phone call. And it makes me emotional today because the technology is about real people, and I have other stories that are not so fun or so positive that will never leave me from the work that I did during that quarter. But hers was good because she could go deal with him. And he did end up in the hospital. He did end up on a ventilator. He did make it. And then I heard from her later, she had handed off to her, I heard through her team, because they're still using it. That was a rapid deployment that I don't know that I've ever actually turned on all those things in Microsoft 365 in like 3 hours, and also they let me on their system. So I could actually do the work, right? Because it's faster. It was faster at that time. Anyway, I always like to remember that this isn't just, those situations are very dire, but there's other situations like helping someone with a business process that creates jobs. And the job is the thing that is so impactful and important to some family somewhere. Like, that's why I do this work.
Yeah.
I do this work because adoption means success for someone, either in our business or in that customer. And in this case, it actually meant that this woman could go do what really mattered to her, which she had to go do. But at the beginning, remember, nobody knew who was going to recover or not. Like, it was a whole nother level of stress in April of last year than all the information we have now. And there was no vaccine. And of course, our response was somewhat poorly coordinated. So there was a lot of issues here in the U.S. beyond what was going on with the vaccine as well at the same time. So yeah, I'm not going to forget her. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. We have a couple of questions in the chat as well here. Do you think remote technology tools are here to stay post-pandemic, or is it going back to old ways?
That's a great question. I do believe that there's going to be this kind of boomerang effect. I think that people are really craving human connection. But I think that the reality is that not everybody's going to go back in a flood the way we all went home overnight. And so we're going to be in a situation where some people are at home and some people are back in our facilities, in our offices, and it's going to fall to people right here to figure out how to make that work. And I do believe that many companies, just like Microsoft, are going to allow people to work from home more broadly. Like, we can work from home 50% without any manager approval. And more companies are going to do that. And that's going to have an effect on recruiting and talent engagement and retention. If you're working in an industry or with a company that isn't doing something like that, it's going to have an impact on who you can recruit. Because people definitely want that flexibility, but they still want to see each other. So yeah, it's here to stay with caveats. Yeah, and if your organization doesn't have a budget for refreshing devices, like in conference rooms and what have you, I highly encourage you to think about investing in that, because the new device technology that we're bringing out is going to really change things for how those meeting rooms feel. And that's going to be really important.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you answered the other question in the chat there as well. So we are running out of time here now. The times we could have been here for hours talking about all this stuff. I love it.
It's my favorite topic too.
Final question before we finish off here. Do you know Satya's favorite feature in Microsoft Teams?
Oh, I wish I did. you know, he is really a developer at heart, and I know that he spends a lot of time thinking about Teams as a platform and what it can do to bring the power of the three clouds together. So Azure, modern work, Microsoft 365, and Dynamics 365. So if I had, I would probably bet my badge on the fact that its ability as a unifying agent is the thing that he loves best. But I could be wrong. You know, I mean, it's not like I get a chance to ask him, but if I ever do, I will ask the question.
Okay, maybe we don't know the answer next time around then.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I love these fireside chats. I love just having conversation. I think we should do more of these things. A little less slideware, a little more conversation, create that human connection, because, you know, all of you are what's really driving all this innovation forward. And we're just very happy that you use our product, and keep the feedback coming so that we can continue to improve it.
Thank you so much for your time, Karuana. Nice to see you.
You're welcome.